Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ. Welcome to today's, it's not really a webinar, that's usually what I say. Welcome to today's webinar. This is more of a great conversation and discussion that I'm very excited to listen to today. But before we kick everything off, I just want to thank our CUGC Women in Tech sponsors. Every year we get help from the community to do the things that we do with women in tech, and this year we've got Citrix, Cohesity, ControlUp, Remo3, and Igel, and I'm just very happy to have them on board with us this year. So thanks to those companies for supporting us. Actually, Esther, I'm going to come back to this slide, and I'm going to go to this slide, and I'm going to introduce who we have. So we have Esther Barthel. She's a CTP. She's one of our founding CUGC Women in Tech mentors, and I have on there that she is a CUGC BFF because she does so much to help the community. In fact, let me show you where she came from earlier. This is Esther's view today. She had an early April Fool's joke played on her in the Netherlands today, and a snowstorm hit, and this was her driving home safely so she could
very safely, of course. Someone else took this picture, absolutely.
So thank you for braving the snow, Esther. Also with us we have Eva Helén. She is an author, a speaker, and a coach, and she's here to talk about her book, the research behind her book, Women in Tech, a book for guys. And Esther and Eva are just gonna talk about some of the things that women in technology face, how men can be allies, and I'm going to stop right there because I know they have a lot to talk about, and they'll go beyond that. I think we'll talk a little bit about mentoring too. So if you grab a screenshot of this page, you can find them on Twitter. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to you, Esther. Do you want me to go back to the Women in Tech mission slide?
Yeah, let's do that. Because I think the real adventure for women in tech and starting a mentorship program to specifically focus on the women in tech and make sure that we build bigger networks, larger networks, reach out and become more visible in the community. I think that all started about 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago. Together with myself, Joe Harder, and Teresa Miller, the 3 CTP women who realized that it was already awesome to have other female techies in the CTP program. And we quickly also realized that we needed to not just be a role model by being in the program, but actively give back to the community and focus on mentoring. So that's how the program got started. And I think we had a very successful beginning. And I thought that we were just doing awesome and just reaching out to women, making sure we had our one-on-one sessions where we could really talk about all the different situations that we ran into, how to grow personally, professionally, even gain more technical skills and just be each other's cheerleaders, so to speak. And then I went to Agile Disrupt and had the real pleasure of attending Eva's keynote, where she basically opened up my eyes and made me realize that we kind of made a small misconsumption starting the mentorship program, because basically we forgot to also include men in our program. And I know Eva will definitely explain it better than I am trying to do right now. But what she made me realize is, and that also resonated back to some of the memories that I had from going to the gay bars at an earlier age or stage in my life, where we were putting ourselves outside of the community and then look from the sidelines and started to basically I'll try to find a nice word, nag about the fact that we weren't invited to play. And I think what Eva said in her keynote, talking about seeing women in Silicon Valley grouped together and forget that they also need to keep the conversation going with the men in tech, made me realize that with our mentorship program, we were basically heading in the same not inclusive, exclusive direction. So she inspired me to open up the program also for male mentors, to make sure that it's not just women having their little conversations and putting ourselves outside of the community, and forgetting to also ask the men if they want to play with us, in the most positive way that you can interpret that, just to stay inclusive and diverse, and not offend anyone in any way. So she basically inspired me with that keynote to have that conversation with the men. And at the same time, she also inspired Jim Moyle, who reached out to me and said, well, I'm one of those men that would love to help to sponsor other women in tech. Do you know where I can find a platform, a community, a user group that will help me with my wish to be a better man in tech, in sponsoring women? So you guessed it, Jim became our first male mentor in our program. I'm so proud of him, especially when he decided to very proudly wear a pink Women in Tech shirt at Synergy. And that definitely changed his view on women in tech, and some of the comments that we are getting daily still today. And with that large introduction, I guess, Eva, I should hand it over to you, because obviously I read the book already, but I know you can do a much better summary or inspiring, start the inspiring conversation.
So yeah, thank you, Esther. That was, I think that was an awesome introduction. And it gives, a little bit of background, obviously, for those who have not met with me before. So I just want to give the ones who are listening a little bit of background. I am one of you. I recently wrote a blog about not being an engineer and crying kind of every Sunday. This is a long time ago now, because I wasn't an engineer, but I've always worked in tech, and I started and ran a couple of enterprise software companies. And obviously my connection with Citrix was both that we had a lot of partners in common, and we had a lot of customers in common, and then eventually we were acquired. Our company was acquired by Citrix. And so I share, everyone who's on the call, I really share your world. And I think that can be helpful to understand that that's where I'm coming from. I'm not coming from HR. I'm not coming from psychology necessarily. But like Esther was saying, I found this, I found myself in a place where I was starting to network with a lot of women, because I'd only worked with men for a very long period of time. And I was starting to network with women to understand what was actually going on. What were people saying? What were they talking about? Because as it happened, 20 some years prior to that, I had actually written at university about mentorship programs in large Swedish organizations, and whether or not they could help women break through the glass ceiling. In my early 20s, it was a little bit less nuanced than it is right now, but that's kind of where I came from. So I was super excited when I realized that there was an opportunity to do something. Women's discussions, and when I say women, I mean anybody who identifies as a woman, but I also mean people from underrepresented groups for the purpose of this discussion, anybody who finds themselves on the spectrum of power imbalances, on the kind of lesser power compared to others. But anyway, so I thought, well, it's very strange, just like Esther was saying. You're sitting there in the secluded place, if it's a woman's only event or if it's a gay bar, it doesn't really matter. And you're having conversations about things that you find are wrong, but you're not sharing that with the people who have the power to help us to make the change. So that is what and how EQ Inspiration was born. So EQ Inspiration was Women in Tech events for guys. So I would invite men to this stage and I would prepare them in advance and then ask them as panelists about what they were doing to support women and underrepresented groups in the workplace. And they would share these amazing stories with us, everybody in the audience. So I thought, why don't I find more of these stories? Because there's so much negative chatter, so much difficulty around this topic. We had the Me Too movement roll around, and a lot of people, not just men, started hesitating as to how they could support women, but also women started to hesitate about asking for help because they didn't know if it was right or appropriate, or was it the right guy, and what was the response going to be, and so on. So anyway, I did dozens and dozens of interviews to lead up to the book that I wrote. And as I was going through everything from CEOs to individual contributors, lots of people from the space that you all work in, I identified 7 character prototypes. Oh, now I'm trying to switch my slide here, Stephanie, and it doesn't want to let me do it. So let me just go back like that. If it's in slide mode, it should be able to do it, right?
Yes.
I'll keep it like, well, let me see, I'll do this. So the 7 character prototypes that emerged were Mark, James, Samir, Memo, Al, Cree, and Richard. And I gave them names so that all of us, when we walk into a meeting, we can say to each other afterwards, maybe that was a Samir type of thing to do, or that was a Mark gesture. Did you notice that? And by giving these character prototypes names, men or anybody in power can identify with one of the character prototypes, and we'll kind of quickly go through them. And then secondly, us who are observing these character prototypes or maybe working with them, we can also understand better why they behave or act the way that they do based on the framework that we have around these character prototypes. So the matrix, this is a very, very simplified version. This more looks like some steps that we're taking. Behind the matrix, when I interviewed men, I would ask them about their understanding about equality in the workplace. Was it an equal workplace or not? I would say most of men say no, technology space is not an equal workplace for men and women, but it can definitely be improved and it can definitely be changed. So that was a really good start. We talked about their upbringings and where their understanding of what equality looked like at home, in school, at university, and then finally in the workplace. We talked about their willingness. How willing are you as a man to support a woman in one way or another? And then finally, what actions are you actually taking? So at the top of the matrix, we have 3 advocates, and then we have 3 allies, and then we have the chauvinist at the bottom. And I'm going to walk you through these different levels so that you can follow. And if you're a woman, like I said, just try to think of if maybe you work with 1 or 2 of these characters already. So Mark is a specialist, and he is maybe somebody who works in HR or as a consultant. Maybe he works with diversity and inclusion in one way or another. I call him a specialist, but it can also be a man who's very comfortable among his male friends or peers to speak up, both on behalf of women and underrepresented groups. He doesn't hesitate to speak up. James is a change agent. He's a thought leader. He is a visible presence in the organization, and he often has already built teams of 50-50 men and women. And he's very comfortable doing this work, and he finds it just as an extension of who he is. Samir is a sponsor, and just like James, he doesn't worry so much about what other people think about him. He will actually identify a woman and who he thinks has the potential to improve, to grow into a leader, and then he will take responsibility for that sponsorship and put his own name on the line. The main difference between Samir and James and Mark is that Samir may be supporting and sponsoring a woman at a time, maybe multiple parallel tracks. And if you work in a company right now, you'll know who Samir is, because he actually very frequently pays attention not to that one woman he's sponsoring, but he'll speak up on behalf of women in meetings and things like that as well. But the difference between him and the other two is that he does one at a time, supports one at a time, while Mark and James really address broader groups. Mark addresses groups of men and women or only men's groups, and James addresses like the teams that he's working with.
So would you say that they are a bit more, would you say that they are a bit more comfortable being out and open about it because they feel it's more part of their nature or behavior than Samir, who is still trying to figure out how to be more open about it? Or
I think so, and as we understand what the steps are, when Samir starts to not just sponsor or hire one woman at a time, but he becomes an organizational leader or a team leader, and then he hires one person from an underrepresented group, and then another one, and then a woman, and then all of a sudden he's actually building a team that is very successful, that consists of first 30, then 40, and then 50% women and underrepresented people. Then he turns into a James. So with every single step, Esther, that you're taking, it's like you need to practice, and you can't just do something once and then be ready to graduate to the next level on the matrix. You will actually—
No, unfortunately, that didn't happen for me either. So I fully understand.
Yeah. And there's certain things that James does, and Samir has the potential to do them, and they're not that far of a stretch for him.
Yeah.
So if we continue with the allies, the biggest difference between the allies and the advocates, just like you were saying, Esther, the advocates, they are comfortable being visible in these roles that they're taking on. They don't worry so much about others because their entire focus is on other people.
Yeah.
And those are the key words. You're focusing on others. The allies, even though they do help and they want to support, maybe they have a daughter at home who's changing their view of women in the workplace. Maybe they have worked on teams with women that were very successful and they feel like they want to be part of more of those teams. And there's a willingness to support and help. But they're still a little bit focused on themselves. They're still a little bit concerned about what other people are going to say about what they're doing. So that is the biggest difference between the allies and advocates, as two groups. With Memo, who's the top of the three allies, he's our mentor, and we'll come back and talk more about mentorship. But the most important thing in mentorship, because he's still hesitating a little bit, is to find a formal mentorship program, which is what you offer. So there you go. Al is our happy-go-lucky ally. Says, I love working with women. I think they're super valuable. and he wants to support and help, but he doesn't even know where to begin. He is often doing things and supporting women, but not aware of them. So we need to bring a little bit more awareness. And that goes for Cree as well. Cree is if you think about, if you've been either in an office or in a setting or at a customer meeting and somebody starts talking about, well, you know, women should also have a voice or we should make them more visible, then Cree tends to become a little quieter or uncomfortable or even perhaps leave the room because he doesn't want to be part of that discussion. But it doesn't mean that he's not supporting women. It's probably going to be somebody who works very closely to him, or maybe somebody at home, his partner, his sister, his daughter, somebody like that. But he just doesn't really see that as support quite yet. And then finally at the bottom we have Richard. And Richard, he's opposed to change. He doesn't like change, and he's worried that women are going to take over men's positions in the workplace. Here, it is really up to all of us, not to judge, not to shame, not to blame. We have no idea why this guy got the way he is. So let's try to figure out why, and then let's support him by giving him the right motivators. He won't be motivated by becoming a visible leader, building an organization of 50-50 men and women. That's not him at all. But what might motivate him is the statistics around diversity and inclusion, talking about how diverse groups actually make better decisions. Why? Because there's a bigger discussion, there's not so many nodding heads, people are questioning why people think things a certain way, and decisions will take longer to make, but ultimately be better. Inclusion, we talked to him about, and he's like, oh, what a stupid word. I'm not interested in that. And if you say, well, are you interested in keeping your team members? Yes, absolutely. Of course, I have a great team. I don't want to see anybody go. Well, then inclusion is an important thing, because when people feel like they belong and they're seen, heard, respected, and valued for their contribution, well, then they will thrive. And people who thrive and feel good in their jobs, they become more productive and they tend to stick around. And lastly, we have this amazing opportunity right now as far as a motivator, and that is the talent shortage. I have read so many different statistics. One of the pieces of statistics I have is that we're going to be in the tech industry in the US, 1.2 million tech workers short in 2025. But I have read numbers that way exceed that number, because tech is now everywhere and we are going to have a talent shortage. So we need to start thinking about how we recruit and find people for tech out of other sources than we've been tapping into before. We need to go to other schools, other educations, and yeah, other sources.
So
I'm just going to walk through, Esther, I'm going to walk through this ladder just very briefly. But before I do that, do you have any more questions around the characters?
Well, I just want to make sure that I fully understand what the best way is to approach Richard, because I think I'm not the only one that immediately has a person pop in my head if we're talking about the character type of Richard, because I think we've all had at least one Richard in our career, and I found it in the past that kind of behavior immediately triggered with me that I wanted to be very convincing and persuasive in my my discussions with Richard to make him see my point of view. Where now that I'm listening and reading about the Matrix, I'm realizing that it's much more about having a conversation, having a dialogue about what the win can be for both of us if we team up, instead of just trying to convince him of that our way or diversity and inclusion is the way forward. So I hope that I summarized that correctly what I took out
Yeah.
of your story.
And it is super tricky. And from the very beginning, when I had, identified this character, and of course I've met him many, many times myself throughout the years, but I think that the main thing is not to attack and not to
Yeah.
say we need you to change, or you should be understanding, or you should, you should or need to do this or that or the other. I think it's a question of making it like, I like to narrow things down a lot. Whereas, if you walk out of a meeting and Richard has either ignored, let's just say that you're in a meeting and he just ignores what you say, or you
Yep.
notice that he ignores what another woman is saying, or he's speaking over her, or he is what they call mansplaining, in other words, re-explaining what she just said in different words or a louder voice or whatever, and you're noticing this, then making him aware of it, because you actually have a very tangible thing to talk about, like, and right then and there. Don't do it in front of people. Don't make him, don't give him any reason to kind of pull back even
Yep.
more and become defensive, but rather say, hey, in that meeting, I noticed that you were, you weren't really paying attention to what Mary said. Is that because you didn't really understand what she was saying, or is there anything else, like from before? Like, have you worked with her before and you don't feel like you have so much confidence in what she's saying? No, that's not the case at all. Well, what? Tell me what happened in there, or do you want to explain this to me? Because I think it's really bothering Mary, and I think she's a valuable resource. So, I just want to hear kind of where you're coming from on this. But like, really not, you can't convince this guy by attacking in any way or
Yeah.
form, or trying to explain things, because he doesn't care. And that, and we can't judge him for that, because we don't know why he became that way.
Yeah.
But rather making him aware of things that are going on in the moment. And so let's say that, you're building out your team, right? And you're in desperate need for more people. And he's like, well, I can't find anybody. And you're like, well, maybe we should hire a woman. And he's going to be like, no, I don't think there are any women. There's no pipeline, right? That's the normal discussion. And so then the question is, well, how about if we sort of brainstorm around what other places we might be able to find people from? And what are the qualities that we actually need in this person who we're going to hire? Does this person really need to have 5 years of experience in our specific technical field? Or is it enough that they have a technical education but not a lot of work experience? Or is it enough that they have a different kind of work experience and we can actually teach them on the job if they're a smart person? So there's a lot of, I don't mean that we're supposed to fold or that we're supposed to walk away from a difficult discussion. What I'm saying is, if you want to approach this man, it's often a man, then you need to sort of give him a reason. You have to kind of like open the door a little bit first. You can't just like open it wide open and then hope that he's going to understand what you're talking about, because he's just going to become defensive and walk away. Does that answer
Yeah.
your question?
Yeah, because you're basically saying that I should also overcome my own assumptions, because I'm still learning that I cannot read other people's mind. So I'm learning now that it's a lot of assumptions that I'm making, and I forget to ask the questions to check if my assumptions are correct or not. So yeah, that's a
Yep.
different conversation than the attack, because I'm already assuming that I figured out where you're coming from.
Yep.
Yep.
No, the never assume concept. That's a good one. That's a
Thanks.
really
Yeah.
great one.
Yeah, I should make that like the writing on the wall, so I get reminded every
Yeah, I
day.
got one better for you, but I'll tell you afterwards. So,
Awesome.
since we're talking so much about Richard, this is.
Yeah, I don't want to pick on him, just to be
No,
sure.
no, and but it's a natural, it's a natural question. We want to understand better how we can deal with him. But let's talk a little bit about the other ones as well. So with Cree, like I said, he's often not even aware that he's supporting us, or supporting anybody. He has never really even reflected over that. But the fact is that he is, so we need to make him aware. And the same thing goes there. It's if you ask him, well, would you be interested in participating in a mentorship program as a mentor, for example? You have this amazing technical expertise, and we have a lot of people who actually want to tap into that knowledge, for example. He's like, well, I've never supported anybody before. I don't know what you're talking about. And then you say, well, is there anybody on your team that you've worked with for a long time who doesn't look or act or talk like you or is different from you? Yeah. There actually is a woman on my team, and we have had a great relationship for many years. Okay, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you've been out on customer site, for example, with her, and you felt that she was treated unfairly? Yep, that has happened. Okay, what did you do? Well, first I didn't even realize that it was going on, but then, afterwards, when she brought it up, I said, yeah, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I noticed that has happened a couple of times. Next time it happens, I think I might actually say something, not in the meeting, but like afterwards.
Yeah.
So making him aware of the things that he's doing and how he's already supporting people is a really good start. And like I said, maybe it's somebody at home, maybe is helping his daughter with college applications or something like that. And making him aware that he's actually supporting somebody of the other gender or another gender is a great start.
Yeah, it's the small suggestions that already make a big impact and difference. And I think we sometimes forget to communicate that as well, because I've had conversations and presentations about the mentorship program, and I had the male allies asking me, so how can we help? And then I realized that I didn't even have a game plan yet. So getting back to that first comment that you made, where you said it's very important to have a formal mentorship program, that also made me realize, we need to broaden our scope. We should not just focus on those one-on-one mentoring conversations, but we should maybe open it up to have like special topic mentoring. So we can maybe even mentor a group on how to become a better presenter, because I know a lot of the allies would love to help us with that. And I even had questions or offerings from the allies that say, well, I have this awesome home lab. I would love to just have like a geek night out with more women as well to just build more technical skills. So I'm definitely aware of the fact that we need to, we're still struggling, but we need to formalize those offers as well for help.
And that's exactly what you just said now. That is exactly what we would tell Al, because Al wants to graduate and become Memo, the mentor. How does he do that? Well, the first thing, like you were saying, they say, how can I help? And then you say, well, why don't you go with a formalized mentorship program? And the reason for that, Esther, is that there are, there's so many doubts, and people, men in particular, they find that they're concerned that they're going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, and that they're going to be judged for it, or that people are going to question their motives for saying or doing certain things to support others. And I think there's a couple of things. When you have a formalized mentorship program, everybody knows it's out in the open, right? I'm a mentor, you're a mentee.
Yeah, the intent. Yeah.
And then I have, a partner at home who also knows that I'm a mentor and you're my mentee, and that's the relationship, and that's what's going on. And in a lot of cultures, that is very important. You know, maybe not where you live, or maybe not where I live, but there are a lot of cultures where you have a third party who's standing by and watching and wondering what is going on here. And it may be at work, it may be at home. So make it completely transparent. Don't make the conversations that are going on between mentor and mentee transparent. There is nobody. I was part of a mentorship program, and there was actually a third party person who was kind of monitoring what was going on in the mentorship, and it made me absolutely crazy. So I refused to report anything back to this man, happened to be a man, because I had a great mentorship with this young woman who gave me feedback directly and said how much she appreciated it, and she's kept in touch over the years and so on. So, but having it formalized takes a lot of doubt out of the program, which is a really good start. The other thing that you were saying, which is exactly what we talked about, you know, you don't have to commit. When you're saying, I want to become a mentor, it's not a year commitment or a 6-month commitment. It can be project-based, or it can be challenge-based, or it can be task-based. So if it's a specific thing that you feel like you want to improve at, and it's a technical skill, or like you're saying, a presentation skill, something like that, it's actually a really great opportunity to get a mentor to support you while you're doing that and learning those specific skills. And maybe it takes 1 meeting, maybe it takes 5 meetings, and you give each other homework and things like that while you're going through the cycles. But it doesn't have to be a huge commitment. And the magic that happens between the mentor and the mentee is obviously that you then build a relationship, which is based on technical skills and knowledge, and then friendship kind of, comes out of that. So it's not like because you're a mentor, you need to ask, well, so how are you actually, and how are you really doing? That's not at all what we're talking about. Let's focus on the skills.
No, it's not always the fuzzy stuff. It can be just fun and being excited about some technologies that we love to just. Well, I can talk for hours about PowerShell script. So fully understand that. Yeah.
So anyway, so now we've talked through specific examples and things that Richard Creal can do to get up to the level of memo. Once you get up to Samir, James, and Mark, like one thing specifically I can say is when you reach the level of James and you're thinking, oh, okay, well, I've done it all now. And I don't think there's anything more I can do. I mean, I have a great team, a successful team with 50-50 men and women, so on. Well, share it. Tell the world about it. Tell everybody who wants to hear how great it's going, how well it's going. Because it is, the role models here are so important at every level. And Mark should not be the role model for Cree. And James should not be the role model for Richard, but rather just the person or character prototype or one or 2 levels above. That is the role model, because that's achievable. Everybody can climb 1 step just by doing small things on a daily basis. And the other thing I want to say there is this is not work that goes outside of the regular work day. It's not something that takes time out of your busy schedule. These are little gestures and actions that you take throughout the day that become part of who you are, how you act, how you talk, how you interact. And by doing it over and over and over, you make yourself ready to graduate to the next level. So I think I'm gonna stop there. I'm just gonna ask that everybody who's on this webinar to actually think about somebody who they think that they would like to support and help, and ask them, how can I help you? Just reach out today and say, hi, how can I help? I'd listen to this podcast. I know of this mentorship program. If there are any skills or anything that you think I can help you with, let me know. And then the other thing is also tell somebody else about support that you have given or that you have received. Because like I said, we want role models, and we want to hear about these positive stories over and over again. So I'm gonna pause the presentation there, and then go back to you, Esther.
Perfect. Well, I'm still digesting all the coolness that you're already sharing, and you're giving me so much more insights in how I can still approve how I approach men, because I think I'm still guilty of making a lot of assumptions too, or sometimes even being a bit, I'm not going to say scared, but reserved in starting the conversation, because like you said, with all the Me Too movements, all of a sudden we're in this era where we are so super conscious about how we interact with each other, and super conscious about what the exact phrasing is of what we're asking or saying, to make sure that we're not offending anyone in the conversation, or at least that is how it feels for me right now. So yeah, definitely helping me.
And I think that the key thing there is to say it like that, to say, you know, I haven't mentored before, and I am concerned about making mistakes or saying or doing the wrong thing, but I don't want to just as a mentor create a safe space for you where you can learn these new skills. I would like you as my mentee to also offer me that safe space, so that I'm allowed as a mentor to make the mistakes and we can talk about them.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Because I have to admit, even with the program, we've been so focused on creating a safe space for the mentees, we totally forgot that it also has to be safe for ourselves as mentors as well. Because that's when you really connect with each other, and well, my experience is that that's where the magic happens, or where you both get inspired and both grow as persons, and well, just well, have this awesome feeling, not just about yourself, but about women in tech and how we can empower each other. And I think that really helps in making the next approach, or the next mentor mentee conversation even easier. So yeah, definitely helps.
The like the lowering the barriers to entry, you know, across the board, both for mentors and for mentees, or for anybody else who starts off wherever they are on this matrix, like on this ladder, and allowing for mistakes to happen, allowing for people to try, you know, and try small. It's that I think that that's one of the, like, that's the key. There's a couple of key things that are part of my message. One is obviously that we can't treat every person in power the same way. We can't we can't deliver the same message to somebody who sits high up on the matrix or lower down on the matrix, because we'll lose the interest very, very quickly of a lot of people. And then regardless, like once people have identified with a character prototype, just sort of saying it's totally fine. It doesn't matter where you begin. The key question is, are you interested in doing anything else? Are you, you know, oh, well, you've dialed into this webinar, you're already doing something. Well, tap yourself on the back and say, great, you did it. You're here today, right? And then what
it's
is
small steps, and then you grow. It becomes more part of your daily routine, so to speak, or your personality, and then you can grow from that. But I do understand the baby steps. And I would, from personal experience, would also suggest that it's easier to start the conversations with the allies and the sponsors than to pick the chauvinist as your first goal, because well, those conversations, especially if you're still trying to figure out what the right tone is, they can easily discourage you if you make like a small mistake that feels like it has larger consequences in the relationships that you're building. So yeah.
And I think, a question that often comes up is if you're a woman, how do you actually approach somebody? Obviously, if there's a mentorship program being offered, that's a great place to start, because then you can say, well, I'm actually looking to become a better speaker. Do you have anybody who can actually coach me through this for a little while? That's very, very tangible. But if you're sitting kind of alone as let's say you're the only saleswoman on the sales team, where do you begin? Like, who are you going to go to without sounding like you're whining and complaining? Because that is perhaps not the best approach. And at the same time, every other person who works on that team might just be blind to the whole thing. So you're kind of in a lock, right? And I've had now 3 or 4 women reach out to me who've actually said, I worked up the courage after reading your book and talked to one of the guys on my team, because I've noticed that he actually pays attention to not only when I speak in meetings, but I've also heard him tell other guys, hold on, wait, Lisa's still talking. And by being, just recognizing that these things are going on in the form of indirect support, if you will, or direct support, she was able to then ask this guy afterwards, hey, I noticed that thank you for saying that, and thank you for speaking up, and sort of thank you for being on my team. I really appreciate it. And that boosts his confidence. So the next time they're in the meeting, he does the same thing again, and then again and again. And then somebody else is like, oh, okay, well, he's doing that. That's pretty cool. I want to do that too. So the next time he's in, the other guy is in the meeting, he does it as well. So it's almost like, I wouldn't say that it's contagious, but that's kind of the idea behind it. If everybody just starts doing a little bit, we sort of create this big movement, and it just becomes normal and natural. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of joking around it, but that's okay too, because we just need to get back to some sort of normal. I think we kind of lost ourselves for a long while.
Yeah, I know. For me personally, humor is very important to cope with situations that might become tense. So it's like the break states to make sure that it doesn't become like a heavy conversation. And I do realize that with well, lately I started to worry if the jokes were still appropriate or not. But listening to you, I think it's okay to just, because normally when I introduce myself as a speaker and I talk about the Women in Tech mentorship program, I always make like this small joke saying, well, it's not a dating show for me, so please do not get the intention wrong here. I'm just trying to reach out to more women in tech and basically, well, almost offering myself as your cheerleader, your personal cheerleader, to see if we can just empower each other more. But yeah, I was kind of worried if that joke is still appropriate, but it feels like at least it doesn't make it such a huge topic. It's just more like a casual mention, and it makes it, I think, makes it easier to approach me and say, hey, about that mentorship program. Can I ask you a question?
Not, you're not making fun on behalf, like you're not making fun of anybody else. It's something you're referring to yourself, yes, right? And
that is true.
I think that a little bit of self, whatever it's called, not just criticism, but just making fun of yourself kind of de-dramatizes things in general. The confidence thing, though, that you mentioned is really important. It's like, when do you know if it's wrong or right? And the thing is that afterwards, you can ask a couple of people, hey, I cracked this joke again. Do you still think that that's okay? Is it appropriate? And then if somebody says, no, it's not, then, well, ask why. Why not? And like, would you mind like telling me how you feel about that or what you think about it? Because I actually want to understand. And I find that, being a white, straight woman, I'm super privileged compared to so many other groups. And the only way for me to understand what it is that they're going through, and being European and having come to the States, half a lifetime ago, I really had to learn everything about, or learn as much as I possibly can about racism. Because that to me, in the United States, racism always is like, that's the first thing, and then gender discussions sort of come after that. Now we have a lot of gender discussions, obviously, because because of politics, really. But putting myself in that position of like, how am I supposed to understand what this Black woman is going through if I don't ask her to tell me?
Yep.
I don't claim to understand what it's like to grow up as a Black woman in the United States. But if I want to help and support somehow, I have to ask, how can I help you? Is there anything I can do? Please explain to me what it feels like to go to the supermarket, and being looked at a certain way, or whatever it is. I have to ask, and I have to make myself humble enough to be willing to listen to the answer without judging,
Yep.
and listen without coming with a suggestion
Yeah,
or
that's hard
solution.
for the analyst in me. That always goes for like connections and problem solving and
that, yes, in the tech world, when I talk to
yep.
big groups of engineers, I'm like, we are problem solvers. We love to fix things and come up with solutions. And I have to ask that when you ask the question, how can I help you? Just shut up. Just be quiet. Don't say anything. Just listen to what the answer is. And
Yeah,
that
and
is,
try not to be triggered by each and every word that you go, oh, this is the first clue for solving the puzzle, because that's what normally happens in my head. That the minute I hear like 2 or 3 words or like trigger words almost, where I'm going like, oh, this is a clue, now I'm getting to the solution. And then I
yes,
forget to just be open-minded and listen and just take it in. And not just start making connections and solving puzzles. Yeah.
yeah. And then, okay, so let me just go back to the confidence thing, because I know we're running out of time. We often talk about women's lack of confidence in all of these situations, not speaking
Yes.
up for themselves, not asking for a raise, not taking enough space in the meeting, and so on. But I want to make a claim that women are confident enough. But
Thank you for saying that.
But when they walk into an environment or a setting where perhaps they are not, where they can't really be 100% themselves, then they don't feel as confident. So
Well,
I
maybe
don't think that
not
this,
confident, more not comfortable to be ourselves, or not comfortable to be visible, or at least maybe that's even a very personal reaction. But I
right,
realized just very short, since a short time, that what you're saying, it's not about not being confident, it's more about not being comfortable being me or knowing how to behave. Because in my career, most of my role models have always been men. And it took me a very long time to realize that what is natural behavior for men and my role models, which at some point I tried to copy and make my own, definitely is not very natural behavior for me being a woman. And So it took me a long time, and I'm still in very different situations, struggling to just be me and not just perform like behavior that I think is acceptable in the situation. So thank you for
That's
once again
that's
saying
exactly
it's
right.
not.
Yes, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's right. So the thing is, another thing is like, I'm of the generation where I never brought my whole self to work, right? Never. Are you crazy? I'm not going to share everything about myself. No, I don't want to bring my whole self to work. But the question is not what's male or what's female. The question is, when you're building that team culture or between peers or in your mentorship relationship, mentor and mentee, it's a question of humility. It's a question of listening. It's a question of compassion.
Yeah,
That
and
way,
realizing that being you is okay.
yes. And when you start to use those tools in that language, as opposed to saying, this is the man's way and this is the way it's always been and it's always worked, or this is the woman's way and it's always worked and it's working so beautifully now. Let's meet together where there's common ground in leadership styles and use those kind of features almost to actually nurture and build the cultures that we're trying to create so that everybody feels like they're welcome to a workplace.
Yeah, and I
Right?
think that's the real goal or the real achievement of diversity. Just having all these individuals being themselves and bringing their own unique skill set and their own unique characters to the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine how boring it would be otherwise?
Oh yeah, I've been on those boring conversations where most of us are just going like just nodding to
Yeah.
the most, let's just say, popular person in the room. And then
All right.
yeah,
So here's to never assume, right? And
yes, that's a big lesson for me, definitely.
all right.
And be proud of being you.
Right. So I think our time is up, but I don't know. I would continue, but I want to
Yeah,
be
I was
respectful of everybody.
wondering when Stephanie was gonna pop up and just
Oh, she left.
cue
She
them.
was like, I know this stuff
See,
already. She left the room already.
you talk about Steph, because basically I think Stephanie still has like one final cool announcement to make for the attendees of this webinar.
I
I'm just
do.
slowly gonna hint. Yes.
So thank you so much for being here today, and to thank all of you. Let me go grab my link so that I have it ready. I should have had it ready earlier. Sorry. Okay. So you all, for coming, you all get a copy of Eva's book, and I'm putting a link in the chat for you right now. So if you just fill out this form and send us your shipping information, and we'll get them ordered and sent right out to you. So we're going to get that taken care of. And then I just hope that I think, Esther, I know we talked about maybe reading the book, but then also having the book then be shared, right?
Yes, I think that's where this whole conversation started, with me telling Stephanie, especially within the mentorship program, we wanted to put in a fun and an interactive challenge. So I suggested that we should get our mentees at least one copy of the book and challenge them to read it and then share it with an ally or a sponsor, or maybe even that chauvinist that you think would be a cool way of having their eyes opened on their behavior. Because I think this could be a great conversation starter with getting back into the conversation with the men in tech. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I just want to say one thing. I'll just put in a word for the book, right? It is actually very, very easy to read, and it has lots of pictures, not too much text,
I
and
know.
little diagrams for those of you who are engineers who like that. So it is not a big, thick book that will take it. You read it in 2 sittings. And the first part is my story, which you can read at a later time if you want to. So it is actually, it comes in kind of handy because it is a good conversation starter.
Yes. So thank you very much for writing the book and publishing it finally. Because some of you that know Eva a bit longer and me, I've been asking you for over a year when the book was going to be published. So yeah, I'm so thrilled that we can finally make lots of noise about it, because I think this is the perfect conversation starter to get back into the conversation with men in tech. Can't repeat that enough.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much to both of you for doing this today. And thanks to everyone for being here. I'll, in case people who were here had to leave, I'll make sure I get the link sent out for the book in an email. And we'll also have the recording ready for you if you need to revisit anything, and share it. Share the recording too. So thank you, Eva. Thank you so much. And Esther, really appreciate both of you, and I think it was a really great conversation. And I know we had some nice comments in the chat to that effect too. So thank you so much.
Definitely. And looks like there's still a bit light out here, so I can make some snow angels.
All right.
Yes, go play in the snow, Esther. All right, thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.